we're going to start the webinar. So thanks everyone for being on the webinar today, where we're going to take a look at Learn Online, which is available not only for Creo, but also for Windchill. And this is a fantastic way to bone up your skills, whether it's learning Creo or learning Windchill. As Paul Dye is going to go over, Paul is going to be our presenter today, and he's going to give us a brief overview of Creo Learn. We learn differently nowadays than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Just the manufacturing market, the economy, just the way everything is today has changed dramatically. And instead of sitting in a classroom traditionally for 5 days and learning Creo, there's absolutely a more efficient and better way to learn Creo, especially focusing on what your needs are instead of learning things that you may not use. So this is a tremendous tool. 3HTI is the #1 reseller for PTC for Learn Online. Our customers have had a lot of success with it. So we're very well versed in this solution and also in meeting our customers' needs. So without any further ado, Paul, I'm going to let you have the con and lead the presentation. Thank you for helping us today, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can confirm here first that you can see my screen, hear me okay?
Yes, we can. We hear you loud and clear.
All right. Thank you very much for having me on today. And thank you everybody else for hopping on. So if this is your first time listening in to what we're going over around the Learn Online subscription, this is an extremely powerful tool that we have available to us, right? Something that Rob mentioned is the fact that training used to look a little bit different for these different types of tools for software in general, right? You would typically have people go to a classroom setting for a week straight and essentially drink from the fire hose of information, right? You'd have these 6-hour sessions where you go through and get force fed all the information. But what we saw, and really through a lot of research that we did, was the fact that it's not the best way of learning, right? Whenever you're doing that, if you're not applying that information within, a week of you going through and learning on a particular topic, a week later, you're probably not going to be retaining a lot of that information. So what we really did was build out this Learn Online tool as a way of making this process more efficient. So I'll go through and explain exactly how this is laid out, some of the different capabilities of this, and then I'll go through the interface a little bit just to show you what the catalog looks like, how you would go through and access some of these courses, and just a little bit about how that's structured. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, obviously. I'll do my best to go through and answer any of those. And if there's anything that I can't get to in the call today, I have a very extensive team that I could reach out to and get essentially anything that you need answered from my side. All right, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. One thing I like to cover before we go through and talk to some of the specific capabilities to the tool is some of the main challenges of really why we built out the Learn Online subscription and PTC University in the way that we did, right? So first and foremost, whenever you're going through and trying to learn software, you might have worked with written instructions in the past, and these can be very hard to follow, right? There's no clear way for you to see all the steps in the process. It leaves a lot up to interpretation, and you can get lost very easily, right? Especially if those are outdated, some of the button clicks are a little bit different, then it's going to be very hard for you to go through and learn what you need to. And because of that, you see a lot of companies starting to implement e-training, especially over COVID, right? Whenever people couldn't go on site anywhere, we need a way to virtually get people onboarded, up to speed. But the problem becomes around that. What happens whenever you have questions, right? You don't have an instructor in the room with you. A lot of times you're probably just working with videos that are pre-recorded, and sometimes those can be great. It's a good way to get some information, but whenever you have questions, your only option really is to maybe ask other people on the team that have done the training, or try to go on Google, right? And just hope that you have the answers there. So that's not a great way to go about it. And then you have the issue of what happens whenever you can't attend those training sessions in person, right? It's very rare that anyone sets up a session like this and every single person from your team or who's getting onboarded is able to attend. So you end up just having people have no idea what happened. Maybe you have some documentation around it or recording, but it can be very difficult to get all the information. And as well, if you have questions or if something's different about the way that you go about the process, you don't really have a great way of getting that figured out. So these are all things that we typically see out in the industry today, and things that we've seen in the past of people having issues around that. So what we really wanted to do is build out what we have in our PTC University to give you a few different options to solve these issues. The way it's structured, first and foremost, you have what's called e-learning, which is part of PTC University. This is something that's free and available to anyone that has a Creo subscription or Windchill, ThingWorks. It works into all these different areas of what we have with our PTC products. So this is all of our pre-recorded content, how-to videos that are all about 45 minutes to an hour long that users can access at any time. And these are really great because they're all right there on demand. You can get answers or insight to very particular topics. You don't have to dedicate time to a class or doing hours and hours of research. It's just something that you always have available to you, and you can always reference if you're working with, say you have a Creo license, that's something that's going to be available to you at any point throughout the process. And then we have really the main topic of discussion today, which is the Learn Online subscription. So this is actually bringing in subject matter experts to deliver live training classes, all about 3 hours long for each segment or each topic that you're going to be working around. And it gives you the ability to ask questions live throughout the session. You're in a real class with a real teacher. And once you have the subscription, you have unlimited access to the full catalog for the tool. I'll go through and show what that catalog looks like. But before we do that, I'll go through and just kind of talk a little bit about how it's structured, right? We also have public classes, which are more of those multi-day classes for users to attend either virtually or in centers. It could be really great for new hires joining your organization. You want them to attend, say, for example, a Creo fundamentals training course, get them up to speed fast, have questions answered in person, and get them back and able to contribute very quickly. So that's something that you'd really only attend once. And around this process as well, we have what's called PTC certifications. This is a really great way to show your knowledge in the industry, to test yourself to see exactly where you stand and understand where you could also improve. Right, so you can complete a certification exam, say, for example, in your Creo fundamentals to prove your knowledge. And around that, once you would get an 80% on that exam, you get a certification for that class or for that topic, right? It's valid for 2 years upon completion. Those are included free with the Learn Online subscription. But also, one thing to mention here as well, if you didn't want to work with a full subscription, it gives you access to the full catalog of offerings and different topics from within, say Creo or Windchill, for example. You could get different topics a la carte as well. And I'll go through and show a little bit about what that looks like too. Now, looking more into Learn Online in of itself and the subscription, these classes are all live. They're all 3-hour courses. Nothing's pre-recorded. And with that subscription, unlimited course enrollment. If you take a course now and then feel maybe you need to get a refresher later, 6 months or so down the line, you can just sign up for the class again, re-attend it. If you want to take a class for every single Creo module that we have available, feel free to do so as well. These classes are all running on a global schedule. You have offerings at 9 a.m. Eastern, 1 p.m., and 5 p.m. Eastern. There's a bit of flexibility to work around your schedule and time zone that you're working within. And the information that you're working with is very comprehensive. There's tons of different topics to go through, whether it's for modeling, drafting, for simulation, design, so many different areas that we cover around that. And as I mentioned before, once you complete any of those courses or different topics and you want to test your knowledge, you take that exam. You have both a fundamental and professional level exam as well. So it'll give you those different levels of competency from within the tool. So looking at it, what can you really expect to do within these classes? Well, first and foremost, it's going to start with the instructor showing a brief PowerPoint presenting the concept that you're going to be covering during the session. And then what you're going to do is apply an exercise by the instructor sharing their Creo in the cloud environment. You're also going to have a link to a Creo in the cloud environment as well, on which you'll be able to go through and try out these different exercises. And once you've gone through and applied one of these, they'll give you multiple different exercises to complete by yourself. And what's great about that is as you're going through the class, working on these different exercises, if you have a question, you pretty much just raise your hand on the call, ask away. It's just that easy. The instructor will answer your question, or they'll walk you through the problems that you're having and help you to get an understanding right then and there. There's no waiting. There's no trying to search around for getting answers to the questions that you have. So the idea here is that it's very hands-on. It's these instructor-led classes guide you through those exercises. And then you would go through and try things on your own, maybe struggle a little bit, but that's honestly how you grow, right? You go through and try things out yourself, but give you the help that you need at any time. So by the time that the class is done or you've gone through a particular topic, you really know and understand how to use the different parts of that tool. You also have knowledge checks along the way. So essentially, you're going to have questions or prompts that the instructor will give you to complete throughout the class. And then the instructor will explain them and make sure everybody understands exactly what was done throughout that knowledge check. If the instructor asks a question and you don't know the answer, that's completely fine. That's what's expected, right? They'll go through and explain that thoroughly, have a discussion around it to explain it, make sure you fully understand. If you're struggling to grasp a concept, the instructor's going to spend whatever time they need to help you to get up to a level of understanding around that. It's just the same as if you were in an actual classroom setting. And on top of learning all of your key concepts, you'll learn tips and tricks about the tool. So for example, is in the fundamentals class, there might be people that are just starting into Creo, switching over from a different platform, and they might have no idea that you can use the center wheel on the mouse to rotate the model around, right? That might be a different pick, a different tool from within a separate tool, right? So just things like that that you'll get from the class to make you more efficient on a day-to-day basis outside of just the picks and clicks that you would typically go through in the course. You'll become just a more efficient user overall. And last but not least, I mentioned around those certifications. You have both your fundamental and professional levels of the software. Shows others in the industry that you have a great understanding of the topics themselves, right? Leads to more efficiency and speed within your role. Shows other people within your company or elsewhere that you have more expertise on the projects that you're working with, and really just validation of that as well. All right, so I'm going to go through and show a little bit about how you would access this, right? So I'm actually going to share up my browser here so you can see kind of the general format. It's just going to be right here on our different training options. I'm going to be focusing in on Creo training in this particular example, but you can see here as well, you have this available for Windchill, like Rob mentioned. You also have it into ThingWorks, which is our Internet of Things platform, and also of Euphoria for augmented reality. You have options in either of those. So you have essentially a main page that gives you access to all of the training that you have available with PTC and this PTC University. The first of which I can show you very quickly is the free offerings. These are the video trainings that I mentioned that are all available on demand, and you could essentially narrow this down very quickly, right? So for example, if you were trying to get Creo training, you'd be able to break it down by the particular topic that you're working with, whether it's Creo parametrics or schematics or your simulation, right? Say you just wanted to go into your Creo parametric and you had questions on assembly, you'd be able to break this down by each of these different areas. If you were trying to get more information on constraints within the assembly, you have tons of different ways of narrowing that down. One thing I'll mention as well is that you have different playlists as well for being able to understand different topics, right? So you have playlists around assembly modeling, just getting started into assembly work, right? So it's able to break that up into these different functional areas that you could dive into and really gain a deeper understanding of how to work within these particular areas. So this is, again, just part of PTC University. This is available through our Learning Connector, essentially on-demand tutorials that you'd be able to dive into for any of those. Now, that doesn't contain what I would say would be the more comprehensive options, which we would have with our Creo Learn Online subscription. Here I can go through and show you very quickly the catalog of different options that you have within here. So you can see essentially what's laid out is all the different topics that you could dive into for a particular class. Here you can see all of the fundamentals that you first and foremost have available to you, and as well the certification, the exam that would go into those fundamental courses. And the fundamentals covers really what you would expect, just basics of modeling, assembly work, drawing on the 2D side, even a little bit of analysis. Things that we see really as essential for most day-to-day Creo users. But you can see that you have a breakdown into many different functional areas, from modeling to surfacing, sheet metal, assembly work, even into specific functional areas like cabling analysis, even down into updates, right? So say you're working on a previous version of Creo and you want to understand what it looks like nowadays, now that we're up onto Creo 9 or Creo 8, whatever you might be moving to, you can see what's available, what's been introduced over the past couple of releases of Creo and really get you up to speed. So you can see there's a lot of different areas that you could dive into. Say, for example, there's a particular topic that you wanted to get more information on. You'd be able to click the I next to it, and it's going to give you a breakdown into the specifics of that course. It lets you know exactly what's being covered, lets you know which languages it's being covered in, and the target audiences, any of the prerequisites that you might want to cover before getting into the class. And if you decide that this is something that you would want to enroll in, if you are working with that subscription, you'd be able to simply just say, hey, I want to find a class. It's going to take you live into all the different options that you have, all the different dates, gives you the instructor that's going through and doing the training on that particular day. That's something too that if you work with some of these different courses and you have an instructor that you like, you can go ahead and see, hey, when are they going through and doing all these different trainings. So very easy to go through, enroll within that. You could just enroll with the click of a button, get signed up, and then on the day of the session, you would be sent a link that would take you into a Creo Cloud environment, just get you right up to speed, right? No downloads, nothing like that needed to get right up and working from within that class. And that's something I'll mention here too as well, is the fact that once you start going through and doing these trainings, you have tools from within here for managing that. You could access the training schedule that you've worked with, see your upcoming classes, see the ones that you worked with previously. Lots of different ways of managing that process as well. So very easy to work with and all going to be browser based, all going to be very easy to go through and access any of that information. All right, so that really covers a high level of exactly what you're really getting with the Creo Learn Online subscription. Again, we see this as essentially invaluable for users that are either coming from working on an older version of Creo, just want to get more efficient at their day-to-day processes, or coming from a different tool. And that's something that we've seen time and time again with this as well. We have people that are actually experienced Creo users. They have been using Creo for 10 plus years, and are very good at what they do, but there's things from within Creo they just haven't worked with before. Maybe they haven't worked with some of our more advanced surfacing tools or haven't done any analysis. There's tons of different things that you could really get a lot of great value out of, even if you are a more experienced Creo user. So a lot of different use cases that this really plays into. So that really covers what I wanted to mention on today. So I can pass it over to you, Rob, if there's any questions or if there's anything that you wanted to cover from your side as well.
Excellent. Sounds good, Paul. Yeah, not a lot to really get into deep, but give an overview so you can see that, pretty much every single capability within Creo and extension is available within the Creo learning package. And once again, it's a great way to figure out, you don't know what you don't know. So it's a great way to bone up on Creo. I mean, we have a customer that had been using Pro Engineer for about 10 years and modeling the same way, and didn't realize how they could just create a new wall in sheet metal probably about a minute and a half faster than what they were normally doing. And when you're doing that over and over again, that tends to save a lot of time. So it was like, wow, I didn't realize I could do this. And there's a lot of things you might not realize until you try it and dig in. I mean, we're so busy working and trying to meet deadlines every week. It's like taking the time to sharpen your saw. You take the time to sharpen your saw, you'll cut down more trees than just, not sharpening the saw. If you keep the saw blade gets dull. So I guess that's the analogy I'll leave everybody with. So thanks for being on. If you have any questions, just reply to the email that was sent inviting you to this webinar. Those emails come back to me and I can answer any questions that you have. And we will see you next Thursday, where Gary Hoffman, our principal and an industry veteran, is going to explain what is in a Creo package and also reviews the history of the Creo packages going back to the early days of Pro Engineer, because a lot has changed and a lot has evolved. And it's another one of those segments where, hey, how do I know what's in my Creo package? You're using certain things, but there's other capabilities in there that you might not know about. So we're going to go through not just what's in the base package, but also in the base license, but also what's in the other packages of Creo, what's included, and just kind of give you an informational webinar next week. So we look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks again for being on today. Have a great afternoon, everybody.